The subtle erosion starts quietly. You notice it in small ways. A decision you once made confidently now feels uncertain because someone close repeatedly questioned your judgment until you second-guess yourself. Over time, you hesitate more, apologize for things that aren't wrong, and feel drained after interactions that should be neutral. Your memory of events blurs, not from age, but from constant correction that makes you doubt what really happened. You adapt your behavior to avoid conflict, shrinking parts of yourself to keep peace, yet the unease lingers. This isn't sudden drama. It's a gradual shift where your inner compass drifts, and you wonder why simple things now feel heavier. Many live with this quiet distortion for years before seeing the pattern. It's real, it's common in modern relationships, and it changes how your mind processes reality without your full awareness. If this resonates, hit that like button and subscribe for more grounded Stoic insights on protecting your mind in a chaotic world. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Number 1. How narcissists exploit your brain's wiring. Narcissists begin with charm and intense affection, flooding your system with approval and attention that feels like true connection. This creates a powerful pull because your brain releases chemicals tied to reward and bonding, making their presence feel essential. Over time, they withdraw that warmth unpredictably, leaving you chasing the high of their rare kindness. The brain adapts to this cycle, strengthening pathways that link survival to their approval while weakening independent judgment. You start to question your perceptions not because they are wrong, but because the inconsistency trains your mind to seek their version of truth for safety. Gaslighting follows as the core tool. They deny events you clearly remember, twist facts, or accuse you of exaggeration. Each denial creates cognitive dissonance, a painful mental conflict between what you know and what they insist is real. Your brain works overtime to resolve this tension, often by accepting their narrative to reduce discomfort. This repeated effort rewires neural connections, making self-doubt automatic and external validation feel like the only path to peace. The prefrontal cortex, which handles clear reasoning, becomes strained under chronic stress, while the amygdala heightens fear responses. The result is a subtle but profound shift. Your brain begins to anticipate manipulation as normal. Hypervigilance sets in. You scan for signs of anger or disapproval, even in calm moments. This constant alert mode exhausts you, yet it feels safer than trusting your own senses. Stoicism teaches us here that what is in our control is our assent to impressions. Epictetus reminds us, events do not disturb us, but our judgments about them do. By pausing before accepting their reality, you interrupt the rewiring and begin to protect your mind. Practical steps emerge from this understanding. Observe thoughts without immediate belief. Label them as impressions, not facts. Journal what happened objectively, separate from their spin, to rebuild trust in your memory. Limit exposure when possible, creating space for your natural wiring to recover. The brain's plasticity means these changes are not permanent. Consistent practice reverses the damage. In time, you reclaim sovereignty over your perceptions. The narcissist's influence fades as you train your mind to value internal truth above external distortion. This is freedom, not from them, but from the chains they forge in your own head. Number 2, the erosion of self. A narcissist rarely attacks your worth directly at first. Instead, they plant seeds of subtle criticism wrapped in concern or honesty. You hear phrases like, "I'm just trying to help you see," or "You always take things the wrong way." Each comment chips at your confidence, training your brain to internalize fault. Over months, this creates a new default. Self-blame becomes the quickest way to restore harmony. Your sense of identity blurs as you mold yourself to avoid conflict. The brain, seeking to reduce pain, strengthens pathways of people-pleasing while dimming those tied to personal boundaries. You lose touch with your own desires, opinions, and limits because prioritizing them once led to punishment. This adaptation feels like survival, but it leaves you hollow, reacting instead of acting from center. Trauma bonding deepens the hold, Intermittent kindness amid cruelty creates an addictive attachment. Your brain confuses their unpredictability with depth of love, releasing stress hormones in absence and relief in return. This cycle mimics addiction, making detachment feel like withdrawal. The hippocampus, vital for clear memory, shrinks under prolonged cortisol, blurring past events and making the good moments loom larger than the harm. Stoic wisdom cuts through this fog. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize their behavior reflects their flaws, not your value. Practice indifference to what they think. Focus on living according to virtue, not approval. Affirm daily. This is their opinion. My worth rests in reason and character. Rebuild by small acts of self-trust. Make choices without seeking their input. Speak your truth calmly, even if it risks disapproval. Each step strengthens neural pathways of autonomy. Healing comes not from changing them, but from refusing to let their mirror define you. Number 3. The fog of confusion. Cognitive dissonance arises when reality clashes with the narcissist's imposed version. You know the truth, yet their denial forces mental gymnastics to reconcile the two. Your brain resolves this by doubting itself, creating mental fog that clouds judgment and decision-making. This confusion serves their control. When you question your sanity, you rely more on them for clarity. The prefrontal cortex fatigues from constant conflict resolution, reducing focus and emotional regulation. Anxiety rises as the amygdala stays activated, interpreting ambiguity as threat. Stoics view impressions as neutral. Only our assent makes them good or bad. When dissonance hits, withhold immediate judgment. Ask, is this fact or interpretation? What evidence supports my view? This pause prevents automatic surrender to their frame. Practical tools include grounding in physical reality. Note observable facts. Seek trusted outside perspectives. Limit rumination. Over time, dissonance weakens as you consistently choose your reasoned truth. The fog lifts when you stop negotiating reality with them. Inner clarity returns, sharper than before, because it has been tested and reclaimed. Number 4. The chronic stress loop. Narcissistic interactions trigger endless fight or flight. Cortisol floods your system repeatedly, shrinking the hippocampus, the memory/learning area, and enlarging the amygdala, the fear/anxiety area. You live in hyperalertness, exhausted yet unable to relax. This loop makes small stressors feel overwhelming. Decisions paralyze because the brain prioritizes threat detection over calm reasoning. Physical symptoms, fatigue, sleep issues, compound the mental strain. Seneca advised preparing for adversity by reflecting on it calmly in advance. View the narcissist as training in virtue. Their chaos reveals where you must build resilience. Practice daily premeditation. Imagine their tactics without emotional charge. Counter the loop with stoic routines. Morning reflection on what's in your control. Evening review of judgments made. Breathe deeply to calm the nervous system. Exercise to discharge stress hormones. These rebuild balance. Your brain heals through consistency. Neuroplasticity allows new pathways of calm and clarity to form, replacing old fear circuits. Number 5. Reclaiming your brain. Awareness is the first step. Recognize the rewiring without self-blame. Your brain adapted to survive, now adapted to thrive. Detach from their influence by limiting contact and refusing debate. Focus energy inward. Meditate on impermanence. Practice voluntary discomfort to strengthen resolve. Marcus Aurelius urged, when you wake, remind yourself people may be difficult, yet you will meet them with justice and self-control. Apply this daily. Rebuild self-trust through consistent action. Honor boundaries. Pursue meaningful goals. Surround yourself with virtuous people. Journal progress to reinforce new neural patterns. Healing is gradual but certain. The brain that was reshaped by manipulation can be reshaped by wisdom and discipline. You emerge stronger, wiser, unshakable. Number 6. The addiction cycle. Narcissists master the art of unpredictable rewards. much like a slot machine that pays out just enough to keep you pulling the lever. At first, they shower you with praise, affection, and intense focus, love bombing that floods your brain with dopamine, the chemical of anticipation and pleasure. Your reward system lights up powerfully because this feels rare and special, creating a deep emotional bond almost instantly. Then, without warning, the warmth vanishes. Silent treatment, criticism, or sudden coldness replaces it. The absence of reward triggers a craving stronger than before. Your brain interprets the loss as a threat to survival, releasing stress hormones while desperately seeking the next hit of approval. This push-pull dynamic is intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive pattern known to psychology, because the uncertainty keeps the dopamine circuits firing on high alert, making ordinary stable relationships feel boring by comparison. Over months or years, this cycle reshapes your neural pathways profoundly. The ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens, key players in motivation and pleasure, become tuned to expect chaos rather than consistency. You start associating safety not with calm trust, but with surviving their moods. Your brain learns that peace is temporary and must be earned through hypervigilance or self-sacrifice. Walking on eggshells becomes automatic. Decisions revolve around avoiding disapproval rather than pursuing your own good. The long-term cost is exhaustion. Chronic dopamine dysregulation leads to anhedonia, where nothing outside their orbit brings joy, and motivation for personal goals fades because your internal reward system has been outsourced to them. Stoicism offers the antidote through radical acceptance of what is truly ours. Epictetus taught that external things, another person's affection, approval, or consistency, are indifferent. Only our reasoned choices matter. When a narcissist withholds kindness, recognize it as their action, not a measure of your worth. Practice viewing their intermittent rewards as illusions, temporary pleasures that enslave rather than liberate. Build inner resilience by voluntarily practicing discomfort. Spend time alone without seeking validation. Pursue small virtuous acts daily regardless of praise, and remind yourself that true contentment arises from virtue, not from someone else's whims. To break free practically, track the cycle objectively. Note dates of highs and lows in a private journal, see the pattern clearly, reducing its emotional grip. Replace their dopamine hits with self-generated ones. Exercise that releases endorphins steadily. Creative work that satisfies intrinsically, or acts of kindness toward others that build genuine self-respect. Limit or eliminate contact to allow your brain's reward circuitry to reset. Neuroplasticity ensures that consistent healthy inputs can rewire pathways back toward balance. Over time, the addiction weakens. What once felt like unbearable withdrawal becomes indifference, then freedom. The deepest truth here is liberation through detachment. Marcus Aurelius reflected nightly on the impermanence of all things, including people's behavior toward us. See the narcissist cycle as a passing storm, intense but not eternal. By refusing to chase their unpredictable rewards, you reclaim the sovereignty of your mind. Your brain, once hijacked, becomes yours again, steady, self-sufficient, capable of quiet joy no manipulation can touch. Number 7, the mirror of projection. Narcissists project their own unacknowledged flaws onto you so skillfully that you begin to believe the accusations are yours. They accuse you of being selfish when they demand constant attention, call you controlling when they dictate your every move, or label you unstable after provoking your justified reactions. This projection works because it exploits your empathy. You naturally try to understand and fix what they claim is wrong with you. Each time you internalize their criticism, your brain strengthens associations between your identity and shame, guilt, or inadequacy. The mirror they hold up is distorted, yet you stare into it long enough that it starts to feel like truth, slowly overriding your self-image with their rejected shadows. Psychologically, this erodes the default mode network, the brain's system for self-reflection and narrative identity, replacing authentic self-knowledge with a false, shame-based story. Chronic exposure to projected blame activates the anterior cingulate cortex, heightening emotional pain and conflict detection. So even minor disagreements feel like proof of your defectiveness. You apologize for things you never did, shrink your needs to avoid seeming demanding, and lose the ability to discern where their issues end and yours begin. The result is a profound identity fracture. Part of you knows the truth, but the louder, fear-driven part accepts their version to maintain connection and reduce tension. Stoic philosophy pierces this illusion with ruthless clarity. Seneca wrote that we suffer more from imagination than reality. Here, the imagination is poisoned by their projections. Practice the discipline of assent. When blame arrives, pause and examine it impartially. Ask, does this belong to me, or is it their reflection? What evidence from my actions supports or refutes it? Marcus Aurelius advised treating others' faults as lessons in patience and justice, not as indictments of yourself. View their projections as burdens they refuse to carry. Pity them quietly, but refuse to shoulder the load. Healing requires deliberate reclamation. Affirm your core virtues daily through morning meditation. I am capable of reason, kindness, and courage. No one's words can erase that. Seek external mirrors from trustworthy people who reflect your true character back accurately. Engage in shadow work. Journal honestly about your real flaws without exaggeration, distinguishing them from the inflated ones projected onto you. Each time you reject false shame, you weaken those neural links and strengthen authentic self-trust. Boundaries become non-negotiable. When projection occurs, name it calmly. This feels like deflection, and disengage without defending. In the end, their mirror shatters when you stop looking into it. You emerge with a clearer, harder-earned sense of self, one forged not in their distortion, but in stoic self-examination. The shame they try to implant becomes compassion for your past endurance and strength for your future sovereignty. Number 8. Hypervigilance and the overactive amygdala. The constant unpredictability of a narcissist keeps your amygdala, the brain's alarm center, in a state of chronic activation. Every interaction carries potential danger. A compliment might turn to criticism mid-sentence. Silence might precede rage. Affection might vanish without cause. Your nervous system learns to treat their presence as a persistent threat, flooding you with cortisol and adrenaline, even in quiet moments. This hypervigilance feels protective at first. You scan for signs, anticipate moods, adjust behavior preemptively, but it exhausts every resource. Sleep becomes shallow, focus scatters, small stressors explode into overwhelm because your threat detection system never fully deactivates. Long-term, this rewiring enlarges the amygdala while shrinking the hippocampus, impairing memory consolidation and contextual learning. You remember slights vividly, but struggle to recall your own strengths or peaceful times clearly. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational planning and emotional regulation, fatigues under sustained stress, leading to impulsive reactions, indecision, or emotional numbness. Life narrows to survival mode. Relationships feel risky, joy feels unsafe, rest feels impossible. You carry an invisible armor that protects against them, but imprisons you from true freedom. Epictetus reminds us that it is not things that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The narcissist's behavior is external. The terror is the judgment we place on it. Practice premeditatio malorum, stoic premeditation of evils, by calmly imagining their worst tactics in advance, not to fuel fear, but to rob them of surprise power. When the amygdala flares, breathe slowly and name the sensation. This is cortisol. This is an old alarm. This is not present danger. Ground yourself in the present through senses. What do I see, hear, touch right now? To pull attention away from imagined catastrophe. Rebuild safety through daily stoic routines. Start mornings with reflection. Today I will meet difficulty with equanimity. End evenings reviewing judgments made. Was I disturbed by facts or by fearful interpretations? Incorporate physical practices, walking in nature, progressive muscle relaxation, or cold exposure, to discharge stored stress and teach the body calm is possible. Surround yourself with predictable, kind people to retrain your nervous system that safety exists. Neuroplasticity works in your favor. Repeated calm experiences literally shrink threat responses over time. You are not born to live in perpetual alert. By choosing reasoned perspective over reactive fear, you quiet the amygdala's false alarms. Peace returns, not as absence of difficulty, but as mastery over your inner responses. The narcissist no longer dictates your nervous system state. You do. Number 9. The loss of agency. Repeated failed attempts to reason with or change a narcissist breed learn helplessness, a state where your brain concludes effort is futile. You try boundaries, explanations, empathy. Nothing works consistently. Each defeat weakens the prefrontal cortex's executive functions: planning, decision-making, impulse control. You stop initiating, stop trusting your judgment, stop believing change is possible. Agency erodes until passivity feels like the only safe option. Your mind adapts to powerlessness as a survival strategy. This psychological surrender mirrors Seligman's experiments. Subjects exposed to uncontrollable stress later fail to escape, even when escape becomes available. In narcissistic dynamics, the controller ensures no real escape exists without cost, so your brain generalizes helplessness across life areas. Motivation drops, depression creeps in, self-efficacy collapses. You doubt you can succeed at work, friendships, or personal goals because the template is failure under their regime. Stoicism counters this directly with the dichotomy of control. Epictetus declared, "Some things are up to us, our opinions, desires, aversions, and others are not. Their refusal to change is not up to you. Your response is." Reclaim agency by focusing narrowly on what you command. Your next breath, your next virtuous choice, your next small action aligned with reason. Start tiny. Decide one thing daily without their input. Follow through and note the outcome. Success, however minor, rebuilds prefrontal confidence. Practical recovery includes cognitive restructuring. Challenge helpless thoughts. I always fail. With evidence, I have survived, I have learned, I can act differently now. Set achievable goals outside their influence. Read a book, exercise consistently, help someone to prove capability. Limit rumination through timed worry periods, then redirect to present action. Therapy or support groups can accelerate this by providing external proof that effort matters. Agency returns gradually, like strength after long illness. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles become fuel when met with virtue. Their control was real, but temporary. Your inner citadel remains unconquerable. By exercising choice daily, you dismantle learned helplessness and rebuild a mind that acts, decides, and thrives on its own terms. Number 10. Transforming pain into unshakable wisdom. The deepest rewiring happens when you embrace Amor Fati, love of fate, turning the narcissist's damage into the forge of your greatest strength. What they intended as destruction becomes, through Stoic alchemy, the raw material for wisdom, resilience, and compassion. The confusion, shame, hypervigilance, all become teachers revealing where illusions lived, where attachments blinded, where virtue was tested. You do not deny the pain. You accept it fully, then use it to build an unbreakable core. This is not passive resignation, but active affirmation. Nietzsche, inspired by Stoics, called it willing the eternal return. Could you live this life again exactly as it was? When you reach yes, not from masochism, but from seeing growth born of suffering, you transcend victimhood. Your brain, once shaped by fear, now forms pathways of gratitude for hardship's lessons. The prefrontal cortex strengthens through deliberate reframing. The amygdala calms as threats lose emotional charge. Daily practice, morning meditation on impermanence. All this too shall pass, and what remains is my character. Evening review. What did today teach me about endurance, about boundaries, about self-command? Turn triggers into training. When old patterns surface, meet them with curiosity. Here is fear. Here is an opportunity to choose differently. Seek beauty in survival, the quiet dignity of enduring, the empathy for others still trapped, the freedom of no longer needing approval. Surround yourself with reminders of virtue, books, nature, wise company, to reinforce new wiring. Forgive not for them, but to free your mind from resentment's poison. Pursue eudaimonia, flourishing through reason and goodness, knowing true harm comes only from vice, not from others' actions. In embracing the entire path, including its darkest turns, you complete the rewiring on your terms. The narcissist sought to diminish you. Instead, they unwittingly sharpened you. You stand now not as a survivor merely, but as one who has loved fate enough to become wiser, calmer, freer than before any shadow touched you. This is the ultimate victory, a mind no longer rewired by manipulation, but transformed by wisdom into something eternal. You have now seen the quiet machinery at work, the dopamine traps, the projected shame, the chronic alarms, the slow theft of agency. None of it happened because you were weak. It happened because your brain is designed to adapt for survival, and narcissists exploit that design with precision. But adaptation cuts both ways. The same neuroplasticity that allowed their influence to take root also allows you to uproot it. Every time you pause before accepting their version of reality, every boundary you quietly enforce, every morning you remind yourself what is truly yours to control, you are literally reshaping the circuits they try to claim. Healing is not a gift you receive from time alone. It is a discipline you practice with unwavering consistency. The mind they sought to bend is the very mind that can now stand firmer than before. Stoicism does not promise you will never encounter manipulation again. It promises something far more valuable, that no one can force you to surrender your judgment, your virtue, or your peace unless you hand it over. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, cruelty, and endless demands on his spirit, yet he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That power is yours right now. It lives in the small, repeated choices to observe impressions without instant belief, to meet chaos with reason calm, to love fate enough to extract wisdom from pain. The narcissist may have rewritten parts of your inner world for a season, but they cannot rewrite your capacity for reason, courage, and self-command. Those belong to you eternally. So rise today, not in anger or revenge, but in quiet, unshakable resolve. Guard your perceptions as the most sacred territory. Train your mind the way a Stoic trains for battle, with daily reflection, deliberate detachment, and love for whatever comes. The fog will lift, the cravings will fade, the shame will lose its grip. What remains is you, clearer, stronger, freer than you were before the distortion began. Your brain was rewired without your consent once. Now rewire it with full intention. This is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a life lived on your own, unassailable terms. Thank you for watching. If this spoke to you, carry the message forward. Like, subscribe, share with someone still in the fog, and above all, remember, your mind is yours. Defend it.